Hello, welcome to ACE Manager. Bottom line focus, ACE 31, top 10 expenses. In this chapter, bottom line focus, I started with what I meant by commercial competence, which is understanding a manager's actions and inactions on the bottom line of the organization. I talked of asset-based approach to understand what is profit. I also covered impact of activity level on the bottom line through the concept of contribution and related stories. I briefly touched what is project cost and how it impacts the bottom line. I like to conclude this chapter with certain important other costs and suggest methods to monitor them. I like to call them top 10 expenses. Here, I'm covering commonly incurred expenses in most of the offices. These are all indirect expenses in the sense that their magnitude is not impacted by the organization's level of activity as much as direct expenses on which I shared some podcasts as part of my stories on contribution. Nevertheless, these costs are important. Understanding these indirect costs through looking at absolute numbers is difficult, except for comparing them with the corresponding previous periods. Best method to monitor these expenses is through KPIs or key performance indicators relating to the same cost. Some examples will help in appreciating this approach to monitor the bottom line by controlling these expenses. Like I said, I am covering 10 types of expenses here. Item 1. KPI for salary or manpower cost in a large retail store chain with multiple outlets is manpower cost of each store with corresponding sales achieved from the same outlet as a percentage for the period. Higher the percentage of cost when compared with other outlets, less efficient the store is. Power. In one of my earlier podcasts, I talked of relevance of power generation and power consumption efficiencies. You may generate your own power through generators or buy power from state electricity boards or buy wind power. Effective rate per unit, which is arrived at by dividing the total power bill with the number of units procured, is a good KPI to review. In the case of solar power, of course, this KPI may not be relevant since there would be no recurring costs. The third item is office layout. In the case of software companies where large offices are taken on lease, area per workstation and percentage of common areas to workstations are good indicators on how you could realize your objectives like accommodating maximum number of employees in a given area. The fourth item is cost of interiors. Sometimes organizations take bare shell of the building on lease and do the interiors themselves. In that case, cost of interiors is depreciated over the effective tenure of the lease, and such depreciation is also equivalent to rent for comparing with furnished property cost. If the lease period is short closed, residual depreciation needs to be absorbed as additional cost on short closure. Similarly, if the lease is extended beyond the period when the interiors are fully depreciated, you have saved the depreciation charge for the extended period, which directly improves the bottom line. Let me give an example. You have taken bare shell on monthly rent of 50 rupees per square foot. Spent 3000 rupees per square foot on leasehold improvements. Initial lease period is for 5 years or 60 months. So to recover these cost of 3000 rupees per SFT on leasehold improvements, every month you will charge 50 rupees as bare shell rent and another 50 rupees towards leasehold improvements. In effect, your monthly rent comes to 100 rupees per SFT. Let me say you extend the lease period beyond the 5-year term on similar terms, and your monthly charge will be only 50 rupees per SFT for the extended period, since you have already recovered the leasehold improvement cost through depreciation in the first 5 years. Fifth item is office rent. Cost per square foot per month or cost per seat per month and percentage occupancy are relevant KPIs. Suppose you start creating office space in anticipation of business to come and people to be recruited. You need to know what it costs you to keep unoccupied office space waiting for jobs to come. These KPIs will help in your planning process when you want to ramp up. The sixth item is employee transport. This is also an important cost for most of these companies in software services. Cost per kilometer per month, cost per employee per month, and vehicle-wise percentage occupancy are relevant KPIs. These KPIs will help you to ascertain relevant cost. Say, when you want to give transport allowance to employees who want to use their own transport. The seventh item is consumables. I am referring to establishment related consumables for running the office. Cost per employee or cost per SFT are good KPIs. The eighth item is security and housekeeping. Once again, cost per SFT per month is a good KPI. This can help you negotiate with your service providers when they seek upward revisions. Communication expenses. In the internet era, communication costs require the attention of concerned technical experts. Clarity on data and voice communication costs with related utilization levels of the bandwidth are relevant and important. These costs are no longer as simple as just incurring expenses on telephone and trunk lines. Lastly, advertising, packing, logistics can be measured as a percentage of sales achieved during the corresponding period. Thank you for your attention.